Oh hi, you caught me stealing another YouTuber's intro while wearing a Darth Revan helmet. Speaking of Darth Revan, let's talk about it.
Now, there's one really important question, and that is, who is Darth Revan? Well, Darth Revan started out as a Jedi during the times of the Old Republic, and he had an apprentice named Malik, and eventually they became dissatisfied with the Jedi Council, as tends to happen. See, during the Old Republic, the Mandalorians were on a bit of a crusade across the galaxy, kind of taking whatever they want, doing pillaging and various other evil deeds. And Revan essentially was like, hey, we should do something about that. And the Jedi Council was like, nah. And eventually, Revan rebelled and took Malik with him. And then they both had control of the Republic military and brought war to the Mandalorians. Well, after that, they kept getting a little more power hungry, and that's where Sith shit comes in. So, then they become Darth Revan and Darth Malik. And as Sith tend to do, after they go on a journey searching for more power, there's betrayal. So, Revan cuts off Malik's lower jaw in a little spat. Pretty grisly look for Malik. And then, in return, Malik betrays Revan, and Revan is defeated by a Jedi strike team on board his ship. And that is where the story ends. Not really, but that leads you to Knights of the Old Republic. So, now we're going to get into spoiler territory. So, if you haven't played this game, if you haven't played this game right here, go play it if you're interested. And then come back to this video. Okay? Bye. Goodbye now. Bye-bye. Okay, now that they've left. So, in the game, you create your own character. It is an RPG. And it is revealed at the end of the game that you have been Darth Revan the entire time. So, you're recreating the path that you took previously. When Revan was defeated by the Jedi Strike Team, he was brought before the Council, and they decided that, well, let's give him another shot. So, Revan ends up having to follow pretty much the same path that he did before with Malik. They're searching for pieces of a map to find this place called the Star Forge. That's again another piece of lore that isn't necessary for this video. But Revan and Malik went to several different planets for that map, and you have to retrace the steps of the Sith Lords. Well, the Sith Lord and yourself. And then that leads to your eventual confrontation with Malik and how you interact with the people around you and the lives of your companions. And it's an incredible twist that I really wish I would have been able to experience firsthand. But, you know, it's also one of those things with once you're kind of far into the community, it's a twist it's almost like, Luke, I'm your father. I'm sorry. No, I'm your father. Yeah, it's around that same, once you dive a little deeper. So, with Revan appearing in the Rebuild the Galaxy, I had a little theory, because all the clips that were shown were very cut short and it felt a little odd, that maybe they would have got Keanu Reeves to voice Revan in this. Thankfully, they didn't, and I'm going to get into that shortly. But Keanu Reeves has been like the fan cast for Revan, and most of that is based on the look that was canonically picked for Revan. Well, canonically, this is in the Legends timeline. That was picked for Revan during the Old Republic games. And they wanted to give him a set look because he's not going to be a player character, he's going to be an NPC. And that's where things get a little weird for Revan with me. Because so many of the comics from the Knights of the Old Republic era did so much work to not... Well, I don't want to say so much work, but every time they portrayed Revan, they made sure not to show a face, because that's a created character. Revan looked however the fuck you wanted the character to look. And by that I mean the one of several presets, and that's about it. Now, with the fan outcry to cast Keanu Reeves, it does a big disservice to the game and to the story, not only of the first game, but even of the second game, because Knights of the Old Republic 2 has several bits where there's mystery about Revan and what their identity was. It's one of the first conversations you can have with another character, honestly. With all that in mind, it just, like, doesn't sit right, like, having Keanu Reeves be, like, a set Revan. Personally, I think if we're going to try to adapt Darth Revan into anything, first things first, if you're going to make him canon, it's got to be with the game. So eventually when that KOTOR remake comes out, maybe they'll introduce it in the canon, because frankly, that's the smoothest way you could introduce that era in the canon, is just, hey, we remade KOTOR. It's canon now, because nothing contradicts. And frankly, it's such a loved property. It does a disservice to the games to have something like that locked in. It's a disservice to the player, because the KOTOR games are deeply personal if you really get into the dialogue options. Especially in 2, there's a lot of testing your morality and questioning, like, what is the line between light and dark. You see that a lot with the player character in Kreia and 2. Most of their conversations are about the nature of existence, and, like, if you really follow that, there's some just excellent dialogue in there. And, like, that's why I so heavily recommend the games over doing some kind of adaptation, like a TV show or a movie, because there is so much to experience in those games that trying to distill it all into a few hours of television or a couple hours on a movie screen just wouldn't work. Now, like, if they're gonna dive into the Old Republic, they need to dive into something a little after, or not involving Revan. Or at least, how I would personally do it is, you can set something during that time period, but do not fixate it on Revan. I think, frankly, if we're going for a KOTOR adaptation that would really work, I'd like to see the story of Zane Carrick, because that's a fun comic arc. Well, not arc, that's the entire comic run. And Revan does appear, but as I previously mentioned and shown, we don't see their face. So, something that would keep in line with that is essentially what I'm looking for. And I'm hesitant to assume that we're going to get that. Yeah, that's kind of how I feel on Darth Revan, and if we'll ever see more of him in canon, because it's a cool character, but
we got to be a little careful here, guys. Just a little bit.